On the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz comes an unprecedented exhibition about one of history's darkest moments. Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, features more than 500 original objects, first-hand accounts, and survivor testimonies that tell the powerful story of the Auschwitz concentration camp, its history and legacy, and the underlying conditions that allowed the Holocaust to happen. On now exclusively at ROM. Tickets at rom.ca.
We are watching and waiting for Prime Minister Carney to make his way here to Rideau Hall to ask Governor General Mary Simon to dissolve Parliament. We'll set the stage ahead of that moment, from the politics to the people.
That's what it sounded like just 10 days ago when Canada's newly elected Liberal leader, Prime Minister Mark Carney, called a snap election, with the campaign period just over 5 weeks long, the minimum permitted. And the polls are now showing Carney's Liberals leading Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives, thanks to a bump in popularity since Justin Trudeau stepped down last month as Prime Minister. So campaign teams on all sides are feverishly working to get out the vote, as it's called, making sure every eligible Canadian votes no matter where they live. Elliot Gluck is 23. He's a Vancouver native. He's now on a 5-month-long internship with a tech startup through the Massa Israel program. And he's one of nearly 40,000 Canadians living in Israel. He's also eligible to vote. But for him and many like him around the world, that means voting by mail in advance, perfectly legal since 2019, when the Supreme Court ruled any registered Canadian anywhere can vote, no matter how long they've been away from the country, if they ever lived in Canada at some point. And they can receive the ballot in time to fill it in and send it back to Canada before the polls close on April 28th. Gluck felt the Elections Canada official website explaining all the instructions is too cumbersome, and he worried it would discourage expats like him from even bothering to vote. So he built his own last weekend. He calls the website israelvotes.ca. It's in English, French, and Hebrew. It's to help Canadian Jews in Israel navigate the mail-in voting process for free. And while some critics of voting abroad wonder why people who don't live in Canada full-time should have a say, Gluck believes it's critical, especially for Canadian Jews after October 7th, to do so in this election, when they've been facing spiking anti-Semitism. Although he swears he is nonpartisan and he wouldn't divulge who he's going to vote for, 10 days in, his project has already received some negative anti-Semitic pushback, but that's not discouraging him.
I'm not going to let people who want to harass me throw me off my mission of making sure that Canadians are able to exercise their democratic right.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. Welcome to the CJN Daily, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, and made possible in part thanks to the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation. And before we get into today's story, I want to let you know about the CJN's new fully reimagined print magazine. It's called Scribe Quarterly. It's a beautiful, innovative work of Jewish journalism, catering to the Canadian Jewish community, and it's completely free. Just sign up today at thecjn.ca/subscribe. You might say that Gluck's site, israelvotes.ca, is similar to other third-party operations. For example, Democrats abroad do it to help American expats navigate the voting process in U.S. elections. And although Gluck created it specifically for Israel, it's actually the same process anyone from Canada can use if they're not going to be able to vote in person on the day. Gluck says his website's all above board isn't affiliated with any party or lobby group, even though I've seen some Conservative Party supporters sharing it on social media. Meanwhile, CIJA, the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, has launched its own social media campaign this week to help and encourage Canadian Jews living abroad to register and vote via Elections Canada. Their campaign is called More Than Just a Vote, and their website is jewishcanadavotes.ca. This is Gluck's second time voting in a Canadian federal election. He turned 18 in time to cast his ballot in 2021 when Justin Trudeau won his last election with a minority victory. Elliot Gluck joins me now from Tel Aviv. Welcome to the CJN Daily for your first time.
Thank you for having me, Ellen. It's great to be here.
Well, it's really great to meet you. I'm so glad to find out more about how you got this idea.
Yeah, so basically, on Sunday last week, I saw the news articles coming through my phone that was saying that Mark Carney was about to call an election. And I've been kind of away from the Canadian news for a little while. And curiously, I just looked up, what does the polling data look like? And I saw that, wow, this is going to be a really close election. And then immediately my mind, since I've been in Israel for 3 months now, my mind kind of went, oh, how many Canadians are there living in Israel? And the gears start turning. I find out that there's an estimated 35,000 Canadians living in Israel. And I realized that with elections this close, you win these elections in the margins, and a voter bloc like that could potentially have an impact on the outcome of the election. And so I figured, given my background academically in political science and technically in computer programming, I think that there was a unique area where I could help contribute to get out the vote and try and make Canadians living in Israel's voices heard.
Okay, so talk to me a bit about your unique set of skills. Sounds like from the movie Taken. But, when you looked at the Canadian Elections Canada, I guess it was, website, what went through your mind when you tried it?
Well, first of all, just finding the website is quite difficult. In order to get to the position where you need to actually get to the online form, it's probably at least 5 pages that you have to go through, answering different questions and flicking through different sublinks within different pages. And so just discovery was already a key issue. The second one was that there are a number of what I would describe as dark patterns, which is what we call in the tech industry kind of things that are put in with the purpose to make it more difficult to use. Now, I don't know if that's the intention of Elections Canada or not, but I see it as dark patterns where there are really some limitations on using the website that aren't entirely clear from the get-go that you have to really understand in order to use. For example, you have a hard limit on 2.5 megabytes for uploading your documents to the website. What I've seen come through my website is that a lot of people have images or scans of their documents that are larger than that because computer files these days are pretty large. Additionally, a lot of addresses in Israel have dashes in them or slashes as well. And now a lot of those special characters aren't able to be used properly in the website. And now these are limitations that don't really have much place in the modern technology stack. And I just figured, how many people who already have gone through the process of navigating Elections Canada's website and getting to this point are just going to give up because of these various roadblocks that are put in front of them. And so if there's a system that I could create that's much more user-friendly and basically eliminates as many barriers and reduces the friction to as close to zero as possible, we could really make a significant impact on getting people to vote. I've had people register who were born as early as the 1940s and 1930s, and they've been able to use my website. I don't know if they would be able to figure out Elections Canada's website.
Is your website legit? Are you getting pushback from, are they allowed to use yours? I don't actually know.
I mean, I haven't any issues come forward through my inbox yet.
Because people would want to be like, oh, I don't know if I can use this. I can only go with the one the government. You know what I mean? Like they'd be worried that it wouldn't be legit.
Absolutely. Well, I provide a number of different options on the website for people. I have a system that's semi-automated that basically allows you to register directly with Elections Canada through our website, and we send off your information for you. But there's also an option where you can self-register, and you can tick that box. We send you a link via WhatsApp to the Elections Canada website with detailed instructions on how to fill it out. And people who are more comfortable with that option choose to use that option, and it works fine.
On the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz comes an unprecedented exhibition about one of history's darkest moments. Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, features more than 500 original objects, first-hand accounts, and survivor testimonies that tell the powerful story of the Auschwitz concentration camp, its history and legacy, and the underlying conditions that allowed the Holocaust to happen. On now exclusively at ROM. Tickets at rom.ca.
And how long did it take for you to build this website?
It took me 3 days.
Wow. And has this ever been done before in other elections, you know?
Speaking from experience in the United States, I know there's many different organizations in the US that do similar work. I'm not sure if anything has been done specifically in Canada or specifically targeting expat communities. I'm not sure if there's other projects that do this. I know living through elections in the United States that they have massive voter drive campaigns. So I went to university in the United States where I studied political science. And it's easy for them in the United States because they know every time when their election's going to be. It makes it a little bit more difficult for us in Canada because our elections could happen whenever. So having that ability to work quickly is something that I think is very valuable for this project. But additionally, I know from experience, again, like I was saying, with the voter campaign, voter registration drives in the United States, there's been a lot of systems where, depending on what state you're in, it can be remarkably easy to get registered to vote because there are plenty of third-party systems that want to help you and get you registered to vote.
How do you know Canadians in Israel want to vote?
Whether or not they want to vote, I'd say the way I know Canadians want to vote is, first of all, based on the traction we've been getting on our website. We're getting a lot of positive messages and a lot of signups. And it seems like this is an area where a lot of people weren't even, in many cases, aware that they can vote from Israel. I had a cousin of mine from Toronto who made Aliyah that was telling me his whole idea about, how he kind of never wanted to vote before in Canada, but how with this election being so important, he really feels the need and the desire to vote now, and how, the desire is there. The fact that the website is being used and is gaining traction, I think is telling enough of that.
We don't have online voting, so you have to physically get a ballot and then mail it in or whatever, or drop it off somewhere. How does it work for Israel?
Yes, that's correct. All the voting is done through mail-in ballots. So once you get registered and your registration is confirmed by Elections Canada, they will send a ballot with a return address envelope by DHL. So very good courier. It moves pretty quickly. My ballot's coming in sometime at the end of this week. And from there, you get your ballot, you fill it out, and you can return it either by courier, like DHL, for example, or through Israel Post. There are some concerns about going through the regular postal system because of the, airmail. The war has complicated logistics in and out of the country.
Right. I mean, Air Canada isn't flying yet.
However, DHL, again, they operate their own logistics, and they've been very, very consistent with getting mail to and from Israel. It makes sense that that's the partner that the Canadian government is working with to get ballots over here. Once they're over here, the option is kind of up to the voter as to how they get it back. We're putting together right now a guide on returning your ballot and looking at all the different options that are available. If you do not want to have a ballot mailed directly to you, or if you don't have an address, then you can request the embassy receive your ballot and you can have it be available to pick up there. It is a bit of a different process because you have to reach out in advance to the embassy and request them to do that. But once that is done, then you'll be able to get a ballot mailed there and then return it from the embassy. That's a bit of a more involved process, and that's another process where you can check that off on our website, and we will help navigate you through that process as best we can.
The election's in 4 weeks. So what's the absolute cutoff time that people can do this before it doesn't matter anymore because they won't get it?
My cutoff, I would put on 2 weeks from now. So right now it's the week beginning March 30th. So the week beginning April 12th, I would say, is the last point to get registered. And then assuming it takes a week to arrive in Israel, which oftentimes it's shorter, but we're assuming that it's going to take a longer amount of time. And then a week to get it filled out, and then a week to have it mailed back. That's kind of my conservative estimate. I'd really like to get everyone registered within the next 2 weeks.
Can I ask you, are you saying who you would like to vote for and why?
I don't really want to be there telling people who I think should be voted for. My main goal is just to provide the tools for Canadians in Israel to be able to make their own decisions and make their voices heard. So while I have my own opinions, I don't think it's necessary for me to share that.
The reason I ask is because the article I read in the Times of Israel and some social media posts that I've been seeing are using your article as a way to support Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. So I'm wondering if you're aware that that is how it's so far being shared.
Whatever meaning or opinions people want to pull out of my project, they can feel free to discuss or consider. But there's a disclaimer at the bottom of my website that says this is strictly nonpartisan. And I think it's important that regardless of your political views and how you feel about any of the candidates for parliament, I think the main issue is to get people out to vote. And so I don't want to express any personal political opinions. I have no endorsements or issues to bring up. I just want to get people registered and voting.
And is there any connection that you had with CIJA or any Canadian political lobby groups for this project?
This is all my own doing. I studied political science, mainly as a gateway to potentially going to law school down the line. I may go to law school at some point, but political organizing is not really something that I've done before. But I think it's something that I took on in this case because I think, one, this is a very important election. And number two, I think it's an area where a real impact could be made. And I think that Canadian expats in Israel should make their voices heard, because I think it could be a very powerful voting bloc. I've got a lot of Canadian family that live here in Israel, and that's really been my primary method of outreach. And it's been very successful so far, because if you have one Canadian, they know a number of other Canadians, and they know other Canadians. That's the coolest thing, I think, about being in Israel specifically, is that you've got a lot of concentric circles, and it allows projects like this that are important to be able to spread very quickly.
These people they're not all in one riding. They're spread. I'm sure they're from all parts of the country. So we're only 400,000 Jews in Canada plus 40,000. How is it going to make a difference?
Well, looking at the polling data, I think that given the closeness of this election, hindsight's 2020. I can't say the certainty about what effect this website will have on the outcome of the election. But I think primarily the biggest goal and the most important thing is that throughout the various ridings, this can be a significant voter bloc. If there are a couple ridings that are won by a margin of a few thousand votes and seats are able to be flipped through that, then that's a tremendous impact. But again, I don't know if that's going to happen until after the election.
I had a thought, and it's a negative thought, because being here in Canada, we know that anybody who comes out connected to Israel or doing anything that is connected to Canada and Israel gets harassed online, gets called a Zionist, which it's not pleasant.
I've had a little bit of it, but growing up in communities in places like Seattle, it's nothing that I'm not used to, and I don't let it scare me. I think this is more important work, and so I've received a little bit of nasty messages. Nothing compared to the amount of love and support that I've received so far. But as far as what come as it may, but it's not going to throw me off.
All right. Is there anything that you would like our listeners to understand about what you're getting out of this project?
It's been quite the adventure so far. I mean, it's been only a week since I really began work on the project, and just seeing the response and the positive reaction to the website has been really good, and it helps motivate me and know that this is meaningful and impactful work that could potentially make a real difference. And so that's the one thing I would leave off with, the impact on me. And if you are in Israel, please visit israelvotes.ca and find out how you can get registered to vote.
Elliot, it's been really great to talk to you. Congratulations, Kol HaKavod, for what you're doing. And please let us know how it's going and closer to, right?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me on.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily, made possible in part thanks to the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation. Now, Elections Canada told us they're cautioning people not to divulge their registration information to third parties, only through the government's official website. Gluck does collect your personal data temporarily, and you can ask his help to do the registering for you, or you could just do it all yourself. If you don't have a permanent mailing address in Israel, the Canadian Embassy in Tel Aviv will act as the depot where you can pick up your ballots and drop them off, and the embassy will courier the votes back to Canada. Or Gluck will do the delivery for you. He says although they are planning to do some exit polling as a research project, the website will delete everyone's personal information after Election Day. Our show's senior producer is Zachary Kauffman. A big welcome to Andrea Varsany. She joins as a new producer. The executive producer is Michael Fraiman. Our editorial director is Mark Weisblatt, and the music is by Dov Beck-Levine. Thanks for listening.
On the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz comes an unprecedented exhibition about one of history's darkest moments. Auschwitz, Not Long Ago, Not Far Away, features more than 500 original objects, first-hand accounts, and survivor testimonies that tell the powerful story of the Auschwitz concentration camp, its history and legacy, and the underlying conditions that allowed the Holocaust to happen. On now exclusively at ROM. Tickets at rom.ca.